I'm pretty sure, folks, that it's accurate to say that not a single business has gotten away with discriminating against any customers thanks to the Religious Freedom Act, whatever it's called. I'm having a mental block on its name today. You know what I'm talking about. The New Mexico has their own version of the Indiana law. It did not stop that photographer. It did not let that photographer refuse to photograph a gay wedding. She lost her business. Now, in all of Santa Fe, New Mexico, do you think a gay couple could have found a photography studio that would have agreed to photograph their wedding? Odds are they could have. Why did they target what they obviously knew would be a place that wouldn't? Well, to make an example out of them, but to also intimidate and frighten any other opposition to gay marriage. The photographer in New Mexico is not intrinsic. Her point was that she didn't discriminate against gays, but she didn't believe in gay marriage because of her religion. She felt it immoral if she were to participate in it. Her business was shut down. She lost her business. The same thing happened in Colorado to a couple. I think it was a couple that owned a little bakery. Same thing. You think in Denver, Colorado, a gay couple could find a bakery to make their wedding cake for them? Hell, head to whatever their Publix is out there. Just do it. Nope, they had to find a bakery where they knew the owners would refuse to do it on religious grounds. They lost their bakery. They lost their business. Such was and that was the purpose. The intimidation was such that other customers were afraid to be seen patronizing the business for fear that they would be thought of as also being discriminatory against gay marriage. They lost their clientele simply on the basis of intimidation, and that's the objective here. So that's why the real question here is, when did all this hatred and bigotry for Christians begin? When did the left's discrimination against Christianity and their hatred for Christianity, when did that start? And why is it okay? Why is it promoted and justified? Now, I told you why, and Chris Cuomo just confirmed it. They are considered a majority. And as such, they are automatically oppressors of minorities. In the left's world, every majority that they are not in is an oppressive, mean-spirited, extremist bunch of people. And they have to be taken out. Now, let me conclude reading this post from the evangelical at National Review Online on the corner. This bigotry, the kind I just described, has a purpose. It serves to demonize the last significant constituency standing in the way of sexual revolution radicalism. After all, unless you demonize your opposition, the general public will have little appetite for forcing Christians to pay for abortion pills, or forcing Christian groups to open up to atheist leadership, as the Episcopalian Church did, or forcing Christian bakers or photographers to help celebrate events they find morally offensive. In other words, they had to demonize these people. They had to demonize these businesses. Unless you demonize your opposition, the general public is not even going to care. The general public in and of itself is not going to rise up and demand that these businesses serve or participate in whatever the gay couples are demanding. They have to be demonized first. And when the demonization starts, nobody wants to be on the side of the person being demonized because it's quite obvious you're going to be destroyed. So if you happen to be a customer of the bakery that refused to bake a cake for the gay wedding, you're going to stop going after you see what happens to that business because you don't want to be seen going in there because then you're going to become a target. And this is how they intimidate and basically scare and frighten people into not standing up for what they really believe. This is how they get people who believe in things to shut up and stand down. And it's what the evangelical writer here, and I'm sorry I don't have his name. His first name's David, but the last name didn't print. National Review Online is calling sexual revolution radicalism. After all, he says, there's no clamor for requiring kosher delis to stock pork. There's no clamor requiring gay lawyers to represent the Westboro Baptist Church. It's only working one way here. So while the Religious Freedom Restoration Acts protect people of all faiths, from peyote-smoking Indians to Bible-toting florists, the left's outrage is narrowly targeted against the Christian people whose livelihoods they seek to ruin, whose consciences they seek to appropriate, and whose organizations they seek to disrupt. Boycott Indiana is not a cry for freedom. It's nothing more than an online mob seeking to bully those that it hates. And I don't want to hazard a guess. I want to say David French, but I'm not sure, so I shouldn't. It may not be David French, but it's an evangelical first name David. Now, the next piece of National Review is Charles CW Cooke. And he has a rather lengthy post here. Corporations can't have consciences unless they oppose Mike Pence. Now, this is a fantastic take, too. Watching the protests against Indiana's new religious freedom law this week, I've been struck by something rather interesting, namely by how abundantly happy people who are usually critical of corporations have been to recruit them to their side in this case. Reporting on the backlash on Friday, CNBC recorded that big corporations were among the loudest critics in Indiana. Columbus, Indiana-based Cummins, the world's largest diesel engine maker, opposed the new law in strong terms. Cummins believes it's bad for business and bad for Indiana and sends the message that the state is unwelcoming, said a Cummins spokesman. We are a global company in a competitive environment. It could hinder our ability to attract and retain top talent. Elsewhere, the Indianapolis Star said a number of companies, organizations, athletes, and other high-profile voices have expressed strong opinions to Governor Mike Pence signing this bill into law last week. In the Washington Post, meanwhile, Philip Bump notes since the bill was signed last week, businesses like the NCAA and Apple have expressed similar concerns. These corporate protests were noted and praised on social media and beyond. But wait a minute. Who exactly has expressed similar concerns? Who has been among the loudest critics? What has signaled its intentions to boycott Indiana? Who has expressed strong opinions? Who has lined up to boycott the state in response? Well, we were told at the time of Hobby Lobby that companies cannot have consciences. We were told they can't have feelings. We were told they're not even people. We were told they can't corporately opine on moral or legal questions, as might an individual. And in consequence, they can't be worthy or praise or admonition. What's changed? It couldn't be, could it, that progressives are opposed to the idea that corporations are entities that are capable of holding opinions and taking political stands until they're needed in a fight that they care about. And then when a corporation happens to agree with what the left is talking about, then they're great people. Then a corporation is people. Then a corporation does have a conscience. Then a corporation does have morality when it's on the side of the left. In political circles, it's common to hear it asserted that in Citizens United, the Supreme Court invented a couple of legal principles from whole cloth, and that those decisions now represent a threat to American democracy, and they are, one, that corporations are people. Prior to Citizens United, corporations weren't people. They're evil entities, like Halliburton. And they pollute and they destroy and they poison and they kill. And the second thing that really sent them off the loop was that corporate speech was protected by the First Amendment. They don't have speech. They're not people. And remember Elizabeth Warren? Back in 2012, Elizabeth Warren caused something of a stir when she slammed Mitt Romney for his observation that corporations don't pay taxes, people do. She said, after all, Mitt Romney's the guy who said corporations are people. No, Governor Romney, corporations are not people. People have hearts. They have kids. They get jobs. They get sick. They thrive. They dance. They live. They love, and they die. And that matters. That matters. That matters because we don't run this country for corporations. We run it for people. Remember that? Corporations are not people. Romney, you're an idiot. They don't have hearts. They don't love. They don't help. They don't protect. They don't care. Obama has used identical language in selling ideas and mobilizing his base to hate corporations. In the New York Times last week, Adam Liptak, liberals used to love the First Amendment, but that was in an era when courts used it mostly to protect powerless people like civil rights activists and war protesters. These days, a provocative new study says there has been a corporate takeover of the First Amendment. The assertion's backed by data, and it comes from an unlikely source. John C. Coates IV, who teaches business law at Harvard, used to be a partner at Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, a prominent corporate law firm. Corporations have begun to displace individuals as the direct beneficiaries of the First Amendment, Professor Coates wrote. The trend is recent, but it's accelerated. They don't like any of this, you see. So why are we now being told that companies are taking a stand against Governor Pence? If companies don't have hearts, if companies don't have opinions, if companies are not people, if they don't care, if all they do is kill and maim and poison and pollute, then how in the world can they take a stand like this supporting the left? Why the lazy language? Second, I can only presume that all of those who oppose long-standing legal precedent in this area would remain entirely happy if Pence and the legislature in Indiana decided to use the power of the government to silence Cummins, the corporation, Angie's List, Apple, and any other business. What if Pence decided, in the face of all this corporate opposition, to act like the left does toward corporations, start insulting them and denying them the ability to do any of this because they're not people? What would the left say? The left, no. Corporations all of a sudden have become people. Corporations have all of a sudden have a conscience. Corporations are the greatest thing on earth in Indiana now. Corporations, they do morality right. They do justice. They're doing everything great. They're wonderful. They got people and they care and they live and they work and they die and they don't kill and they don't maim and they don't poison anymore. At least this week in Indiana. Next week, it's going to be a different matter. We'll be back. Yeah, we've also been told that corporations cannot donate to political campaigns or candidates because they're not people. I mean, you remember Citizens United? The left literally went insane when that law, and they're still insane over it. Corporations are hated, reviled, despised. You look at the average Democrat enemy list, and the top 10 things on it are going to be businesses, industries, big pharma, big retail, big oil, big tobacco. They despise them. And then Citizens United came out granting them the right to First Amendment protections and political campaign access, and they literally went batty. Until Indiana came along, now they love them. Now the corporations, the greatest things, Angie's List, they love them. Cummins, they love them. NCAA, they love them. Even though the NCAA last week was exploiting student athletes and using them as slaves last week. The NCAA, basketball, football, you name it, those student athletes, what a joke that is. We're being exploited by the evil NCAA and the NFL and the NBA because they're not paid. They're the product. They're generating all these billions and billions and billions and billions in revenue, and the students are getting nothing but half-acre meals and cheesy little accommodations. That was last week. This week, NCAA, greatest damn sports organization on earth. I know. Fuck. Look. General public going to see through it. Who the hell knows? Odds are not.